Hello, listeners. You might think at 50 I'd have seen it all, but my son Harold, well, he had a new way to test me that I never saw coming. It's a Tuesday morning, and I'm standing in my own hallway, staring at my own kitchen door. Nothing unusual about that, right? Except there's a shiny new padlock hanging from the handle, and my 28-year-old son is dangling the key in front of my face like I'm some kind of misbehaving child. "Mom," he says, with that condescending tone that makes my teeth itch, "this is for your own good. You've been eating too much junk food lately. Cindy and I think it's time you learn some self-control." Self-control. At 50 years old. From the same boy who once ate an entire birthday cake when he was 12 and blamed it on the neighbor's cat. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because this story has layers, my friends. 6 months ago, Harold moved back home. Not unusual these days, you might say. Lots of young people are struggling. I opened my arms and my door because that's what mothers do. What I didn't expect was for him to bring his new wife, Cindy, and a truckload of opinions about how I should live my life. It started small. Little comments about my grocery choices. "Mom, do you really need 3 types of cheese?" "Mom, this cereal has too much sugar." "Mom, maybe you should try intermittent fasting. I'm a grown woman. I've raised a child, built a career as a school administrator for 25 years, bought my own house, and survived my husband's midlife crisis that ended our marriage. I think I can handle choosing my own breakfast cereal." But Harold had different ideas. You see, my son had always been what teachers politely call strong-willed. As a child, he questioned everything. Why couldn't he have ice cream for dinner? Why did he have to share his toys? Why couldn't he stay up past midnight on school nights? Back then, I thought it was healthy curiosity. I encouraged his independent thinking. I praised his problem-solving skills. I celebrated his confidence. What I didn't realize was that I was raising a man who would one day look at his 50-year-old mother and decide she was the problem that needed solving. The warnings were there. I suppose, when he first moved in, he started rearranging my furniture. "For better feng shui, Mom." Then he reorganized my pantry. "More efficient storage, Mom." Then he suggested I needed a budget spreadsheet. "To track your spending, Mom." Each time, his wife Cindy would nod along, her eyes darting between us like she was watching a tennis match and wasn't sure who was winning. I should have put my foot down then. But you know what? When you love someone, you make excuses. You tell yourself they mean well. You convince yourself that maybe, just maybe, they know something you don't. That's the trap, isn't it? The moment you start doubting yourself, that's when someone else steps in to make your decisions for you. The morning of the padlock, I woke up like any other day. I shuffled to my kitchen in my favorite robe, the burgundy one with the coffee stains that Harold keeps suggesting I throw away, and reached for the handle. Click. Nothing. I jiggled it, thinking maybe it was stuck. Old houses, you know? Sometimes the humidity makes the doors swell. Click, click, rattle. That's when I saw it. The padlock, gleaming like a golden handcuff on my own kitchen door. "Harold?" I called out, my voice still scratchy from sleep. He appeared in the hallway, fully dressed, coffee mug in hand. My coffee mug, I noticed, from my coffee maker, which was now locked away from me. "Morning, Mom," he said, like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just locked me out of the heart of my own home. "What's this?" I pointed at the lock. That's when he gave me the speech about self-control, about junk food, about how Cindy had read an article about intermittent fasting being good for women my age, about how they were doing this because they loved me. Love. He called it love. "You'll get 3 meals a day," he continued, consulting his phone like he was reading from a script. "Breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Nutritionally balanced, portion controlled. You'll thank me in 6 months when you feel better." I stood there, my dears, in my own hallway, listening to my own son explain to me how I was going to be allowed to eat in my own house. And for just a moment, just one terrible, weak moment, I wondered if maybe he was right. Maybe I had been eating too much. Maybe I did need someone to help me make better choices. That's what years of marriage to a critical man will do to you. It plants these little seeds of doubt that bloom at the worst possible moments. But then I looked at his face. Really looked at it. He wasn't worried about my health. He was excited about his control. This wasn't love. This was power. And that's when I knew. Harold was about to learn why his father moved out. They left for work. Harold to his job at some tech startup where he probably reorganizes other people's filing systems, and Cindy to her part-time position at a dental office where she gets to tell people to open wide. The irony wasn't lost on me. Alone in my house, locked out of my kitchen, I took stock of the situation. First, I checked every cabinet in the kitchen. Harold had been thorough. Not just the refrigerator and pantry, but every drawer, every cupboard. Even the cabinet where I kept my grandmother's china was locked. Apparently, he was worried I might eat the good plates. Second, I examined the lock. It was a good one, unfortunately. Not something I could pick with a bobby pin like they do in movies. Harold might be an arrogant little peacock, but he wasn't stupid. Third, I searched the rest of the house for forgotten snacks. You know how it is. Sometimes you stash a granola bar in a purse, or leave crackers in a bedroom drawer. But Harold had been thorough here too. The boy had conducted a full pantry raid. I found exactly 3 items: a pack of gum in my coat pocket, 2 peppermints in my nightstand, and a protein bar that had fallen behind my dresser and was probably older than my marriage. 3 items. In my own house. I sat on my couch and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was crying. And I'll be damned if I was going to give Harold the satisfaction of breaking me on day 1. You want to know what I thought about, sitting there? I thought about my mother. My mother survived the Great Depression. She told me stories about making soup from potato peels and turnip greens, about stretching one chicken into meals for a week, about neighbors sharing whatever they had because community was survival. My mother would look at this situation and see opportunity. She'd find the cracks in Harold's plan and exploit them like water freezing in rock crevices. I had 2 advantages Harold didn't know about. First, I'm smarter than he thinks I am. 25 years of managing teenagers taught me that the most dangerous opponents are the ones who underestimate you. Second, I'm not actually trapped in this house. Harold locked the kitchen, not the doors. He was controlling my food, not my freedom. Time to go exploring. That afternoon, I took a walk. Just a casual stroll around the block like any other day. Except I was paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. Mrs. Chen next door was tending her garden. We'd exchanged pleasantries for years, but never really talked. Today I stopped. "Beautiful tomatoes," I said. She beamed. "First year they're really thriving. I have so many I don't know what to do with them." "I love fresh tomatoes," I said wistfully. "My son's put me on a restricted diet. Very controlled portions." Her smile faltered. "Restricted diet? You're a healthy woman," I shrugged. "Young people and their ideas about nutrition." She frowned and handed me 2 perfect red tomatoes. "You look fine to me. Take these." 2 houses down, Mr. Peterson was washing his car. We started talking about the weather, and somehow it came up that Harold was managing my meals now. "Managing your meals?" Mr. Peterson's bushy eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. "You're a grown woman." "That's what I thought," I said. He shook his head and disappeared into his garage, returning with a box of crackers. "My wife bought too many. Help us out?" By the time I completed my circle around the block, I had a small collection of offerings from neighbors who suddenly seemed very interested in my well-being. Funny how that works. Most people mind their own business right up until they hear about someone being controlled. Then suddenly they remember what community means. But I wasn't just collecting sympathy snacks. I was gathering intelligence. I learned that Mrs. Rodriguez gets grocery deliveries every Tuesday and Thursday. I learned that the new couple in the blue house orders takeout almost every night. I learned that old Mr. Jameson has a standing weekly order from the local deli. Most importantly, I learned that my neighbors thought Harold was overstepping. Way overstepping. If my son tried to lock me out of my own kitchen, Mrs. Chen said as I was heading home, I'd lock him out of my house. The seed of a plan began to sprout. Harold was feeling confident. I could see it in the way he strutted around the kitchen that morning, preparing what he called my nutritionally optimized breakfast. Steel-cut oats with exactly 1 tablespoon of berries and a measured cup of unsweetened almond milk. "How do you feel, Mom?" he asked, sliding the bowl across the counter. More energetic? Clearer thinking? I wanted to tell him I felt like strangling him with his own self-importance, but instead I smiled and said, "Different." Definitely different, which was true. I felt different, angrier, more focused, like a hunter who'd just caught scent of prey. "Good," he said, not really listening. "Cindy researched this whole plan. Did you know that after 50, women's metabolisms slow down by 30%? And the average American eats twice the recommended sugar intake?" I spooned my sad little breakfast and made appropriate listening noises, while Harold lectured me about insulin resistance and inflammation. The whole time I was thinking about supply chains. You see, Harold's plan had a fundamental flaw. He was thinking like a jailer, not like a strategist. He'd locked up the food, but he hadn't controlled the source of the food. The kitchen was locked, but the world outside was full of groceries. "I'll be working from home today," he announced, "just to make sure you're adjusting well to the new routine." So he didn't trust me yet. Smart boy. Not smart enough, but smarter than I'd given him credit for. "That's thoughtful of you, dear," I said. He preened a little. Harold always did like being praised for his thoughtfulness. I spent the morning reading in the living room while Harold worked at my kitchen table. Every so often he'd peek around the corner to check on me, like I might have somehow produced a secret stash of cookies from thin air. Around 10:30, I announced I was going for another walk. "Already?" he asked. "You just walked yesterday." "Doctor says I should get more exercise," I replied sweetly. "At my age, you know. Metabolism and all that." He couldn't argue with that. After all, it supported his narrative that I needed to be healthier. Sun Tzu wrote that all warfare is based on deception. I don't know if he ever had to deal with an overprotective adult child, but the principle applies. My second neighborhood walk was different from the first. This time, I had a mission. I stopped by Mrs. Chen's garden again. We chatted about her tomatoes, and I mentioned how much I was enjoying Harold's health program, but that I was worried about getting enough fresh vegetables. "The portions are very small," I confided. "And you know how important nutrition is at our age." Mrs. Chen nodded sympathetically. "My daughter went through a phase like that. All these rules about what I should eat made me feel like a child. How did you handle it?" I asked. She smiled. I reminded her that I raised 3 children and ran a business for 30 years. If I couldn't manage a balanced diet, how did I manage everything else? I filed that wisdom away for later. Next stop, Mr. Peterson's house. He was in his driveway again, this time organizing his tool shed. "How's that restrictive diet going?" he asked. I sighed dramatically. "Oh, you know, I'm learning a lot about portion control. Though I have to admit I miss cooking. Harold's handling all the meals now." Mr. Peterson frowned. "You were always such a good cook. Remember those cookies you brought to the block party? Best snickerdoodles I ever had." "Harold says cookies are inflammatory," I said sadly. The frown deepened. "Harold says a lot of things." Third stop, Mrs. Rodriguez. who was bringing in packages from her porch. "Another grocery delivery?" I asked casually. "Oh yes, I love the convenience, especially for heavy items." She paused. "You know, I always order too much produce. It goes bad before I can use it all. You're welcome to some anytime." "That's so generous," I said, though I should probably check with Harold first. He's very particular about my nutrition plan. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression shifted. "Check with Harold? For vegetables?" I nodded sadly. He means well, but she didn't finish the conversation. But I could see the wheels turning. By the end of that second walk, I'd planted 3 important seeds: sympathy, indignation, and the suggestion that I was being controlled rather than helped. The beautiful thing about seeds is that once they're planted, they grow on their own. Harold was starting to relax. He still checked on me regularly, but with less frequency. Success was making him sloppy. That morning, he made a mistake. A small one, but in my line of work, managing teenagers. Remember, small mistakes are how you lose control of the classroom. He left his phone on the kitchen counter when he went to shower. I had maybe 10 minutes. I used 8 of them to memorize his grocery delivery apps, his payment methods, and most importantly, his saved addresses. Harold was very organized. Color-coded calendar, detailed notes, even backup plans for his backup plans. The kind of person who makes lists of his lists. This was going to be easier than I thought. That afternoon, I borrowed Mrs. Chen's phone to make my first strategic call. "Hello? Fresh cart delivery? I'd like to schedule a grocery order for later this week." Cindy came home early from work that day. I was sitting in the living room with a book when she peeked around the corner. "How are you feeling, Ethel?" she asked. She always sounded guilty when she talked to me, like she knew this whole thing was wrong but didn't have the spine to say so. "Oh, I'm adapting," I said, though I have to admit, I'm a little confused about some of the restrictions. She perched on the edge of the armchair like a bird ready to fly away. "What do you mean?" "Well, yesterday I wanted to make myself some tea, but I couldn't get to my tea bags. They're in the kitchen cabinet with everything else." Her face fell. "Oh, I didn't think about tea. And this morning I wanted to take my vitamins, but they're in the kitchen too." Harold said I should ask him, but he was in a meeting. Cindy looked genuinely distressed. "That doesn't seem right. Vitamins are important," I nodded sadly. "I don't want to be a bother. Harold's working so hard to help me." She fidgeted with her wedding ring. Maybe we could adjust a few things. Make it less restrictive." "Oh, I wouldn't want to undermine Harold's plan," I said quickly. "He's put so much thought into it." The seeds were sprouting. Cindy was starting to see the cracks in her husband's perfect system. That evening, I heard them talking in their bedroom. Well, I heard Harold talking and Cindy making occasional soft responses. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was questioning. He was defending good. Let him explain why his 50-year-old mother couldn't be trusted with tea bags. The grocery delivery arrived at Mrs. Chen's house at exactly 2:17 p.m. I was conveniently watering my front flower beds when the delivery truck pulled up. Mrs. Chen came out to collect her packages, and we started chatting about the weather. "Oh my," she said, looking at the receipt. "They sent me twice as much as I ordered, and half of this stuff isn't even what I selected." She frowned at the bags. 3 bags of Harold's favorite coffee blend? "I don't even drink coffee," I gasped. "That's so strange. Do you think there was a mix-up with someone else's order?" She checked the receipt again. "It says it's for my address, but..." "Wait." She looked closer. "It says it was paid for by someone named Harold Morrison. Isn't that your son?" "How odd," I said. "I wonder if he meant to send this to our house but got the addresses confused." "He's been so scattered lately with work." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Well, these things happen. Would you mind taking this over to him? Save me a trip." "Of course," I said, hefting the bags. I'm so sorry for the confusion." As I walked across our adjoining driveways, I felt like a general who'd just won her first battle. The groceries were perfect. Fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grain crackers, yogurt, and yes, Harold's expensive coffee. Everything looked healthy and appropriate for someone on a nutritionally balanced eating plan. Harold was in his office when I knocked on the door. Harold? There was a delivery mix-up. Mrs. Chen got some groceries that I think were meant for us. He looked up from his laptop, confused. "A delivery? I didn't order anything." "That's strange," I said, setting the bags down. "The receipt has your name on it. Maybe Cindy ordered them?" He frowned and came to investigate. I watched his face as he examined the receipt, the address, the items. The wheels were turning, but he couldn't figure out how this had happened. "I didn't order these," he said slowly. "Well, they're here now," I said practically. "And they look very healthy. Maybe we shouldn't let them go to waste." The beautiful thing about the selection was that Harold couldn't object to any of it. It was all foods that fit perfectly within his restrictive guidelines. He'd look petty and controlling if he refused to let me eat apples and carrots just because he hadn't personally selected them. I guess it's okay," he said reluctantly. I unpacked the groceries with the enthusiasm of someone who was grateful for anything beyond steel-cut oats and measured portions. "Oh, these strawberries look wonderful," I said. "And Greek yogurt. Isn't that supposed to be very good for protein?" Harold nodded absently, still staring at the receipt like it might reveal its secrets. That night, I had the most satisfying snack I'd eaten in a week: fresh strawberries and yogurt. Not because I was hungry, but because I'd beaten Harold at his own game. But this was just the opening move. The real strategy was still to come. Harold was suspicious now. I could see it in the way he kept checking the locks, the way he watched me during meals, the way he questioned every little thing. "Mom, did you go for a walk yesterday afternoon?" "Just to Mrs. Chen's. She wanted to thank us for clearing up that delivery confusion." "And what did you talk about?" "Oh, you know, neighborhood things. She mentioned how nice it was that we're so close. Living next door, I mean." Harold's eyes narrowed. "Close?" "Well, we share a property line. And she's such a thoughtful neighbor, always looking out for me." This was true, but I said it in a way that suggested a deeper collaboration. Harold's paranoid little mind would fill in the blanks. "What kind of looking out?" he pressed. I shrugged innocently. "You know how neighbors are. Keeping an eye on things, making sure everyone's okay." That afternoon, Harold made his second mistake. He decided to work from the coffee shop downtown instead of home. "To get some fresh perspective," he said. But I think he really wanted to escape the feeling that he was being watched in his own house. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was on Mrs. Rodriguez's phone again. "Hello, Quick Bite Delivery. I need to place an order for this evening." The second delivery arrived at Mr. Peterson's house at 5:45 p.m., just 15 minutes before Harold and Cindy were due home. Mr. Peterson knocked on our door, looking confused and slightly annoyed. "Harold, I think your delivery service is having some serious problems. They sent a bunch of food to my house again." Harold opened the door, and I could see the blood drain from his face. Another delivery, another address mix-up, another mystery order that somehow had his name on it, but that he swore he didn't place. "This is getting ridiculous," Mr. Peterson continued. "First Mrs. Chen, now me. Are you sure you didn't give them the wrong addresses?" "I didn't place any orders," Harold said weakly. Mr. Peterson looked skeptical. "Well, someone did, and I'm not running a free delivery service for the neighborhood." He handed Harold the bags and stalked back to his house, muttering about young people these days and taking responsibility. This delivery was different from the first. It included prepared items, a rotisserie chicken, Pre-made salads, soup containers, bread rolls. A full dinner for multiple people. Harold stared at the bags like they might explode. "Mom," he said slowly, "do you know anything about this?" I looked at the groceries with innocent curiosity. They look lovely. Very fresh. Maybe someone's trying to be helpful. Helpful. Someone is placing grocery orders in my name and sending them to random houses. Well, I said practically, at least they're sending good food. Look, this chicken is still warm, and there's enough for all of us. Cindy appeared in the doorway. Drawn by Harold's raised voice, she looked at the food, then at her husband's panicked expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. Harold explained about the mysterious deliveries while I began unpacking the items onto the counter. Everything looked delicious and perfectly normal. "I don't understand the problem," Cindy said slowly. "If someone made a mistake and sent us free food, isn't that lucky? It's not free," Harold snapped. "It's charged to my account. Someone is using my credit card information to order food and send it to our neighbors." "Have you called the credit card company?" Cindy asked reasonably. Harold paused. No, I haven't." "Maybe you should do that first," she suggested. "Before assuming someone's trying to... What exactly do you think is happening here?" I watched Harold struggle to articulate his suspicions. "How do you explain that you think your 50-year-old mother is somehow orchestrating a complex grocery delivery scheme to undermine your authority? How do you make that sound rational?" I said helpfully, "we should eat this chicken before it gets cold. Waste not, want not." Harold spent the morning on the phone with customer service representatives, trying to figure out how mysterious grocery orders were being placed on his accounts. I couldn't hear his side of the conversations, but I could hear the frustration in his voice getting higher with each call. "No, I did not authorize." "Yes, I'm sure." "No, I don't know how someone got my account information." Meanwhile, Cindy was having her own crisis of faith. She kept looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Ethel," she said while Harold was on hold with his bank. Are you feeling okay? I mean, with the food restrictions and everything?" I considered my answer carefully. "I'm learning a lot about myself," I said. "About what I'm capable of when I need to be." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well, I always thought I was pretty helpless in the kitchen, but being on Harold's plan has made me realize how resourceful I can be, how I can make do with very little." This was technically true. I was being extremely resourceful, just not in the way Harold intended. "Sometimes," I continued, "I think the hardest part isn't the hunger. It's feeling like I can't be trusted to make my own decisions." Cindy's face crumpled. "Oh, Ethel, I never thought about it that way." "Harold means well," I said quickly. "But sometimes I feel more like a patient than a person." That afternoon, I overheard Cindy on the phone with someone, her mother maybe, or a friend. "I don't know," she was saying. "It seemed like a good idea at first, but now, she looks so sad all the time. And Harold's getting paranoid about these food deliveries. Maybe we're being too controlling." The seeds were not just sprouting now, they were blooming. Harold had figured out how to freeze his delivery accounts temporarily, but the damage to his confidence was done. He was jumpy, suspicious, and starting to take his frustration out on Cindy. "Someone is messing with us," he insisted over breakfast. "This isn't random. Someone has access to my information and they're deliberately trying to sabotage the program." "Who would do that?" Cindy asked. Harold glanced at me, then away. Even he wasn't quite paranoid enough to directly accuse his mother of masterminding a grocery conspiracy. But I could see the doubt eating at him. Every time I smiled, every time I was too calm, every time I seemed unbothered by his restrictions, it fed his suspicion that I was somehow behind the chaos. The beautiful part was that his paranoia was making him act exactly like the controlling, irrational person he was. Cindy was starting to see it. That evening, She approached me while Harold was in the shower. "Ethel, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my expression neutral. "Of course, dear. Are you happy with how things are going?" Loaded question. I could play this several ways. "I'm trying to be supportive of Harold's plan," I said carefully. "But I have to admit I feel a little diminished." Diminished? Like I'm not trusted to make good choices. Like I'm a problem that needs to be managed instead of a person who needs to be respected. Cindy's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted you to feel that way." "I know you didn't, and Harold doesn't either. But impact matters more than intent, doesn't it?" She nodded miserably. I think we need to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" I asked, though I already knew. "Maybe we were too hasty with the kitchen lock. Maybe we should start with smaller adjustments first." "Have you talked to Harold about this?" She shook her head. "He's so invested in the plan. He thinks any modification would be giving up. But this isn't about giving up. It's about finding a better way." I patted her hand gently. "You're a good person, Cindy. Whatever you think is best." That night, I heard them talking again. This time, Cindy's voice was stronger, more assertive. Harold's responses were defensive, increasingly agitated. The marriage was taking strain. That wasn't my goal, but it was an inevitable side effect of Harold's need to control everyone around him. I had one more delivery planned, but this one was different. This one was going to our house, with Harold home to receive it. The doorbell rang at exactly 3 p.m. Harold answered it to find a delivery driver, with 5 large bags of groceries, delivery. "For Harold Morrison," the driver announced. Cheerfully, I didn't order anything, Harold said automatically. The driver consulted his tablet. "Says here it's a gift order, paid for by E. Morrison," with a note. He handed Harold a small card. Harold opened it and read aloud. "Harold, thank you for caring so much about my health. I wanted to contribute to the meal planning with some of my favorite nutritious foods. Love, Mom." Both Harold and the delivery driver looked at me. I smiled innocently. "I thought it was time I took some initiative," I said. "Show you that I'm learning to make better choices." Harold's face was a masterpiece of confusion and frustration. He couldn't object to my initiative without looking like a hypocrite. He couldn't refuse nutritious food without seeming unreasonable. But accepting meant admitting that maybe I was capable of making good decisions after all. "How did you—" he started. "I called from Mrs. Rodriguez's house," I said simply. "I hope you don't mind that I used your account. I didn't think you'd want me setting up my own when you're trying to manage our grocery budget." The genius of this move was that it highlighted the absurdity of his control. Either I was competent enough to make good food choices, in which case the lock was unnecessary, or I was incompetent, in which case, how had I managed to outsmart his system repeatedly? Harold stood in the doorway, holding bags of perfectly healthy groceries that he couldn't object to, ordered by a woman he'd declared incompetent, using skills he didn't know she possessed. "I think," said Cindy quietly, "we need to have a family meeting." That evening, we sat around my dining room table, not the kitchen table, which was still in Harold's locked domain, but my table in my dining room in my house. "Harold," Cindy began, "I think we need to reconsider our approach." Harold's jaw tightened. "The program is working. Mom's eating better, she's more active." "She's miserable," Cindy interrupted. "And honestly, so am I. This isn't what I signed up for when I supported the idea." "You said you thought it was a good plan." "I thought gentle guidance was a good plan. I didn't think we'd be locking her out of her own kitchen like she was a child." I sat quietly, letting them work through it. This conversation needed to happen between them. "She can't be trusted to make good choices on her own," Harold insisted. "The mystery deliveries prove that. She's been scheming behind our backs. The mystery deliveries prove she's smarter than you gave her credit for, Cindy shot back. And honestly, they were all healthy food. If she was really trying to sabotage your plan, wouldn't she order pizza and ice cream? Harold had no answer for that. Besides, Cindy continued, listen to yourself. You're talking about your mother like she's a criminal. She lives in this house. She pays the mortgage. She raised you, Harold. Show some respect. But the plan was supposed to be supportive, not controlling. There's a difference. I finally spoke up. Harold, can I ask you something? He nodded reluctantly. When you were 12 and you wanted to redecorate your bedroom, what did I do? He frowned. You let me paint it that awful green color. And when you were 16 and wanted to learn to drive in my car, you taught me, even though I scratched the bumper. And when you decided to drop out of college to pursue that band, his face reddened. You said it was my choice to make, even though I thought it was a mistake? Yeah, why do you think I did that? Harold was quiet for a long moment. Because you trusted me to learn from my own decisions. Even when they were bad decisions? Yeah. So why? I asked gently. Don't you trust me to do the same? The room was silent except for the ticking of my grandmother's clock on the mantel. Harold's voice cracked slightly. I just want you to be healthy. I want you to be around for a long time. And there it was. Under all the control and condescension and arrogance, Harold was scared. Scared of losing me. Scared of not being a good enough son. Scared that if he didn't manage every detail of my life, something terrible would happen. Oh, sweetheart, I said softly. I want to be around for a long time too, but I can't live my life as a patient in my own home. I need to be trusted to make mistakes, to learn, to be a person instead of a problem to be solved. Harold looked at his hands. But what if you make bad choices? Then I'll make bad choices, I said simply. And I'll deal with the consequences. Just like you did when you quit college for the band. Just like you did when you moved back home without asking if it was convenient. Just like you did when you decided to control my eating without considering how it would make me feel. His head snapped up. That's not the same thing, isn't it? You made a decision that affected other people without consulting them. You assumed you knew what was best. You prioritized your comfort over someone else's autonomy. Cindy reached across the table and took Harold's hand. She's right, honey. We meant well, but we overstepped. Harold looked between us, and I could see the exact moment when his certainty crumbled, when he finally saw what he'd been doing from the outside. I'm sorry, he whispered. I thought I was helping. I know you did, I said. But help that comes at the cost of dignity isn't really help. It's control wearing a helpful mask. The kitchen lock came off that night. Harold removed it himself, his hand shaking slightly as he worked the key. When the padlock finally clicked open, he handed me the key. I'm sorry, Mom, he said again. This was wrong. I took the key and slipped it into my pocket. Apology accepted. But Harold, yeah, we need to talk about boundaries and communication and the difference between helping someone and managing them. He nodded. I know I messed up. You did. But messing up is how we learn, remember? The question is, what are you going to do differently going forward? Over the following weeks, we worked out a new arrangement. Harold and Cindy would stay in the house until they found their own place. But my home would operate by my rules. They could offer suggestions about meals or activities, but the decisions would be mine to make. Harold struggled with this at first. I'd catch him opening his mouth to comment on my breakfast choices, then closing it again. Old habits die hard, especially when they're rooted in anxiety masquerading as care. But slowly, he began to see that trusting me didn't lead to disaster. I didn't start eating ice cream for breakfast or living on fast food. I made reasonable choices most of the time and unreasonable ones occasionally, just like any other human being. More importantly, he began to see me as a person again instead of a project. Mrs. Chen brought me tomatoes from her garden every week that summer, long after Harold and Cindy had moved into their own apartment across town. "I'm proud of you," she said one afternoon as we sat on my front porch with iced tea. "Not every woman your age would have fought back so cleverly." "Fighting back wasn't the point," I said. "Getting my dignity back was." "Same thing, isn't it?" I supposed it was. Mr. Peterson still waves when he sees me in the yard, but he grins now like we share a secret. Which, I suppose, we do. Mrs. Rodriguez and I have become genuine friends. She taught me how to use the grocery delivery apps properly. No more mysterious orders appearing at random houses. Though she admits she was impressed by my creative problem-solving. "I never would have thought of using the neighbors as delivery hubs," she said. "Brilliant strategy. Desperate times," I replied. Looking back on those 10 days, I realize I learned as much about myself as Harold learned about respect. I learned that being underestimated can be a powerful advantage. When people think you're helpless, they don't guard against your capabilities. I learned that community still exists, even in suburban neighborhoods where people barely know each other's names. Sometimes all it takes is one person, being treated unfairly for everyone else, to remember that we're supposed to look out for each other. I learned that the line between helping and controlling is thinner than most people think, but more important than they realize. Most importantly, I learned that at 50, I'm nowhere near done surprising people, including myself. Harold and I have a different relationship now. Better, I think. Though it took time to rebuild the trust that was damaged during his helpful phase. He still worries about me, but he expresses it differently. Instead of trying to control my choices, he asks questions. "How are you feeling, Mom? Is there anything you need help with? Would you like company for your doctor's appointment?" It's the difference between being treated like a capable adult, who might occasionally need support, and being treated like a problem that requires constant management. Cindy and I have grown closer too. She told me later that watching Harold's behavior during those days made her realize some things about their marriage. About how his need to control could be suffocating. About how good intentions could become harmful actions. They went to couples counseling for a few months. Harold learned to recognize his controlling tendencies and work on them. Cindy learned to speak up when something didn't feel right, instead of going along to keep the peace. They seem happier now. More balanced. As for me, I kept that key. Not because I need it. The lock is long gone. But because it reminds me of something important. The key to my own kitchen, in my own house, should never be in anyone else's pocket. Not my son's, not my husband's, not anyone's but mine. It's a small thing, a kitchen key, but sometimes the smallest things represent the biggest principles. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty about the grocery delivery scheme, if I think I was too manipulative, too sneaky, too harsh. Here's what I tell them. Harold locked his 50-year-old mother out of her own kitchen because he didn't trust her to choose her own snacks. In response, I proved that I was smart enough, resourceful enough, and connected enough to get food anyway. Which one of us was really being unreasonable? The real revenge wasn't the mysterious deliveries or the neighborhood gossip or even Harold's confusion and frustration. The real revenge was proving that his entire premise was wrong. He thought I needed to be managed. I proved I needed to be respected. He thought I was helpless. I proved I was strategic. He thought he was smarter than me. Well, let's just say the grocery deliveries spoke for themselves. But here's the thing about real revenge. It's not about hurting someone. It's about restoring balance. It's about proving a point so thoroughly that everyone involved has to acknowledge the truth. Harold had to face the fact that his mother was more capable than he'd given her credit for. Cindy had to face the fact that she'd enabled behavior that was harmful. I had to face the fact that I'd allowed someone else's anxiety to override my own autonomy. Everyone learned something. Everyone grew. Everyone ended up in a better place. That's the best kind of revenge there is. My story isn't really about grocery deliveries or kitchen locks, or even controlling adult children. It's about something much more fundamental: the right to be treated as a competent adult regardless of your age. Too often, society tells us that aging means accepting diminished autonomy, that getting older means gratefully accepting other people's decisions about what's best for us. I'm here to tell you that's nonsense. At 50, 60, 70, 80, barring actual cognitive decline, we deserve the same respect, the same trust, the same dignity we've always deserved. We deserve to make our own mistakes and learn our own lessons. We deserve to eat what we want in our own kitchens. If someone in your life is trying to help you by taking away your choices, ask yourself, is this really about your well-being, or is it about their need to feel in control? If it's the latter, maybe it's time to teach them the same lesson I taught Harold. Maybe it's time to show them what you're really capable of. Harold visits every Sunday now. He brings flowers from my table and asks permission before reorganizing anything. We cook together sometimes. He's actually quite good at it when he's not trying to control every ingredient. Last week, he brought me a new cookbook. I thought you might enjoy trying some of these recipes, he said. They look challenging enough to be interesting. Challenging enough to be interesting. Not simple enough to be safe. Not restricted enough to be healthy. Challenging enough to be interesting. It was the first gift he'd given me in years that acknowledged I might want to grow instead of just be managed. I'm trying 3 new recipes this week. I might fail spectacularly at all of them. I might love them. I might modify them so much they're completely different dishes. The point is, it's my choice to make, and that, my dears, is worth more than all the perfectly portioned, nutritionally optimized meals in the world. So remember, if you ever find yourself locked out of your own life by someone who claims to know what's best for you, being underestimated can be the greatest gift life gives you. Use it wisely.